conversation with Tina. And 3, 2, 1. God help us. Hi, this is Steve Gillmor, and this is the Gillmor Gang. My director and producer is in Michigan, so I'm on Mars in terms of the production of this show. Joining us from, let's see, just going to have to bear with me. I'm going to be cutting on the fly here. Oh, God. Scoble. Yeah. Okay, Robert Scoble, welcome.
Good morning. It's a weird time for a Gillmor Gang, but we'll do it.
Anytime is a weird time these days. Also joining us from Silicon Valley, well, San Jose, right, Kevin?
Which is the capital of Silicon Valley, so they tell me.
What are you talking about?
San Jose is the capital of Silicon Valley. It says it on the street signs.
Oh,
you haven't seen that?
No, well, I haven't really concentrated on listening to street signs for official information, but that's all right. In New York, they just changed the name to Louis Armstrong Boulevard every other day from 51st Street. So you just don't know. Right, John? John Borthwick?
Right. Hey, Steve. So, Steve, I can't see you, but I'm okay with that.
I can't see you either, Steve, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
That's terrific. Okay, well, I'll see what I can do. Why don't we just start with Scoble? Oh, and John Toshek, you could hear him there in the background. Welcome, John.
Thank you. I'm at the northern capital of Silicon Valley in San Francisco.
All right, so I'm going to go to Scoble for his monologue about the state of Facebook and see if I can get your visuals up.
I don't know that there's a good state this morning because I spent 2 hours last night arguing with my brother over the appropriateness or lack thereof of bringing autoposts from Twitter into Facebook. But I don't know what has changed in the last. What has changed? This week I was at Oakley seeing the new snow goggles they have with heads-up displays. That was pretty cool. And I was at Qualcomm seeing the latest chipsets and artificial intelligence and the healthcare monitors that Qualcomm's working on. That's a $100 billion market cap company and makes most of the chipsets inside most of the Android phones. And where else was I? Oh, and I went to Harman where I saw the latest in speaker design and got to meet some of the engineers who are using open source 3D printing and these new Arduino boards to build new speaker designs faster and cheaper. So I don't know, but I've been off the grid a little bit.
So Harman, don't they aren't they like a holding company of multiple product lines?
Yeah,
what do
they make
have there?
JBL. God, there's like 6 different brands or so that they make. They make a good number of the world's speakers. They make the speaker system in my Toyota, for instance.
What's new coming out? How can they change speakers?
Well, they're able to do a lot more with computer processing. So I don't have a speaker driver, but a speaker is a cone that gets moved in and out by an engine. And in the 70s, those cones could be overdriven and pushed out of their operating range, and that would be called clipping or extrusion. I forget what words he used, but it basically goes too far and makes a bad noise. He's able to now with computing power separate the different bands of audio, so the bass, the treble, the mid-range, and compress those differently. And so as the driver starts getting driven more and more, he can compress down the bass so that it doesn't move that driver into a bad range. And that's pretty cool to see. And then they're starting to do audio processing to make the soundstage wider, even with 2 speakers, and make it so that you can hear instruments in different places better. And they're also they're using 3D printing to test new wave channels. Because one trick that Bose discovered is you put a little tiny speaker into a cabinet, and if you channel that audio through a a channel, you can make it sound like a much bigger speaker than it actually does. And so they're using 3D printing to test out new ways to channel audio to make it sound even bigger out of a more efficient speaker. And what else did they show me? And then the way you control all these new DSPs on these on the chips that are able to do this new kind of signal processing is with these new Arduino boards, and it's a $100 board that anybody can buy, and he can prototype on that board very, very quickly, and that was pretty cool to hear what he's thinking about. But yeah, a lot of fun.
John Borthwick, I've got you in a double box, so it's a double bind only. Talk to me. What's going on in New York?
What's going on in New York? We've had, I've forgotten if we were on since the Sandy debacle, but that was, that's took up a lot of time and energy for all of us in New York, and I think we're still sort of cleaning up from that in a lot of ways. But weather aside and storms aside, we have before the end of the year, there's a whole bunch of new products that we've been working on at BetaWorks, so we've been shipping a bunch of things, and so that's been sort of the bulk of my time and attention in the last 2 months.
What do you think about this Twitter client on the? I've been using the iPad Mini, and the new Twitter client just seems to be a really interesting blend of having stolen all the business models from all of the third-party developers. Any thoughts?
To be honest, I haven't noticed. I use Tweetbot, and so I gave up the Twitter client when the old sliding client went away, which I kind of liked, but I found it difficult. So I haven't tried the new one.
Well, it just got this, sort of the auto expand function, a la I don't know, Rock Melt, or one of these old style. Let's put the graphics in, let's put the video in, all that kind of stuff. But
all the cards are shown, right? Because that's got that was to be expected. All the media is shown in is summarized or shown within the stream.
Yeah, but it sort of expands if you click on it. The item sort of goes to a card interface, which shows you what the citation is, and then puts a small window of the video if there's a video being pointed at. It's just for the Mac Mini. For the iPad Mini, it's a really very fast way of seeing what's going on and getting to it. I find myself.
But generally, Steve, I think that we've been doing quite a bit of work with the cards. One of our startups, Findings, has been integrating pretty heavily with the cards, and I think that the card stuff that Twitter's doing, and I'm not sure what they call it, but there's a related functionality that Tumblr is working with a bunch of developers on. I think that it's in both cases, Twitter and Tumblr, it's an exciting space for developers and even for content companies to begin to push media and more directly into the stream, which I think is makes sense for them and also makes sense for users. So I think that the card stuff is interesting. I think it does introduce a whole new dynamic to the Twitter experience, which I think on Tumblr, Tumblr has always been a much more media-rich experience, and Twitter for me has already become increasingly hard to consume over time because of the speed of the stream. So adding media into it is going to add another dimension to that. And so they've got to get the navigational stuff really right within Twitter, and I haven't seen that. I haven't seen evidence of that starting to happen yet. The Discover tab doesn't work that well for me. But this is all work to be done.
Robert Scoville, what do you think? Have you been using Twitter at all, or are you just still a Facebook lunatic?
No, I'm still over there. There's 300,000 people who follow me, so it's still an audience that I need to serve. You can't leave anybody who says they're going to leave a social network is sort of I don't know. It strikes me as being nutty.
It just can't quit you.
You can't quit these things. You can move some of your time away from them, and I certainly have done that. and move time to Google Plus and Facebook, because I like the engagement models there better than just spitting in the wind and telling people, oh, check out my URL, check out my URL, which is what really is going on Twitter. I mean, I'm watching a new tweet come up every few seconds here, and what is it? It's mostly people pitching their URLs and telling us what they had for lunch. The thing that I'm watching more is what is Ev Williams doing? He's the guy who funded Twitter, started Twitter, whatever, stole it from Jack, whatever you want to say. What he's doing with Medium is more interesting for my thought right now. What do you think about that, John?
So I've been watching that space carefully too, because I think that there's about 3 or 4 different axes that are driving a need for change here. One is that we need to sort of clean things up, right? So I think the Medium and a handful of other people are trying to branch, subtle, are trying to sort of create a cleaner, a better reading experience, better publishing and creation experience on the web. And so I think that that's sort of one axis that's driving this shift. Another one is the shift to mobile. And I think that some of these platforms are doing a really good job at mobile. Others are more focused on the web. I think Medium right now is more web focused. But I think the mobile shift is changing this too, because it changes the nature of interaction. And so, we pushed out a product called Tapestry about 2 weeks ago, which is an authoring platform where you author on the web and then you can read it on the iPhone. And that is similar. We're trying to redefine authoring and create a new sort of high quality, intimate experience on the phone. And I think Ed's trying to do some of that too. I think also Medium is differentiating itself by the collections, or they're trying to group less by make it a feed of URLs. They're trying to group its high quality content, and they're trying to organize it into these collections, which I don't think anybody else is doing that quite as interestingly as they are. So I think there's a lot.
Is collections almost a modern day hashtag, a rethink of hashtagging?
Yeah, because I think that
it's like tag first.
Yeah, it's tag. It's somewhere between tag and lists and groups, right? But it's but they're really trying to create these experiences around specific topics. So, but when you strip all this stuff away, Robert, I think that the authoring experience on Medium, the writing experience is lovely. And
you just listed a whole bunch of things that seem to be either confusing or not used by anybody. I mean, what was that? There's lists, which only Robert uses.
Yeah, but Steve, all this stuff is, so first of all, there's writing. There's people who write. And I'm a big fan of something called IA Writer, which is client-based, but I think the Medium and Ev even wrote about this. They were inspired by some of the stuff there. So people write. People try to collect and organize things, and then and I think the Medium's doing some interesting things there. And then on the phone, I think that people really want these. There's something very intimate about these experiences that is really resonating with people. I'll share a link on the feed here of some of the tweets we've seen on. All the responses we've seen to Tapestry, and it's really emotional. I mean, people just they want to see they want these new kind of intimate experiences that really use the medium, for lack of a better word, in fully. And so,
doesn't it bother you about Medium the fact that you have to get permission in order to be able to go play in the yard?
Yes.
Yeah, it's that sort of bugs me, but that's a rollout strategy, and it's one to make sure that the quality remains high. I.e., don't let Scoble into this because he'll spit all over it. What bugs me more is the lack of mobile thinking and the lack of interaction. There's no, I just read Matt Haye's post, and there's no way to comment on this thing. And I find that very fascinating behavior. It's almost like it's a throwback to the old world where we publish and we don't listen to anybody. But the mobile thing is bothering me more. I'm doing more and more of my content production and writing and reading and etc. on my phone. And there's 1 billion people joining the internet in the next 36 months, none of whom have laptops or desktop computers. So companies that don't think about mobile first bug me.
So Robert, you should take a spin of Tapestry, because what we were inspired by is Robin Sloan went and wrote this app essay this summer, which is called Tapfish, and which is a wonderful essay, but also it was a great medium. And what he did was, he created this little essay that was, purely a tappable experience.
Yeah.
And so what we did is that we sort of took that as inspiration, and then we've developed the platform which you access on the web at tapestry.is, and you can write there. And then you publish, and you get published into the app, and
Okay.
And then in the app you get a fully immersive experience. And so, which kind of is
You have to hold it in front of the camera. There you go.
Yeah.
seeing. So this is
The other way. Stop.
well, thank you. This is a crazy essay that somebody wrote called Otis, which is wonderful, and you just tap through the essay.
See, I've got the opposite attitude to Robert to this, because I go to the Tapestry link and I just get a sod off and go and open an iPhone, which is not that enticing for me. It's actually even more of a sod off than you get from Instagram, because at least that shows you the picture.
Yeah. So Kevin, so we're trying to. So a couple of things. First of all, is we want to get an Android app out fast. So, and secondly is that we want to encourage people into the intimate experience. So it's certainly not meant to be a sod off, because it's when we were halfway through developing this thing, I literally woke up middle of the night one night and said, "Oh my God, this is PowerPoint. Help me God." And I realized that in a very constrained way, we created sort of back-ended our way back into that, and it's certainly not meant to be that. It's meant to be this intimate experience. And so, as you try to redefine these experiences for different mediums, you've got to, we're trying to take the goodness of the web, but the web is one endpoint, right? The real platform here is the internet. And so, I think that it's trying to find that balance is hard, but there will be an Android app shortly, and eventually we'll make, I think, previews of them available on the web. But we want to make the reading experience to be intimate. If you take a look at the Storify link I shared on Twitter, and just click through those, you can see that the responses have been very heartfelt, and people seem to be very moved by this, because it's a personal experience.
John Toshek. Let me see if I can get
Yes.
you on the frame. Sorry about the cutting here; it's non-existent. But John, can you give us your thoughts on the how mobile is moving into this consumer space in terms of actually being successful? I mean, we've been hearing for a long time about how Facebook doesn't get it, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think that's still true, or are we seeing something that looks a lot like what's going on, what's going to go on in terms of mobile?
Are we seeing? We're seeing hints of it all over the place. What's going on with mobile? It started with just quick well, I mean, you could say it started with SMS, but quick updates and pictures. It's going to be more video. It's going to be more content like that. These mobile devices will have much more content. As the content starts to proliferate, there's going to be new apps to be created to, basically make that content more contextual in Robert's view to the person. I don't think anything's none of this stuff works well to me yet.
Really?
No. I mean, sure, you can get Twitter feeds, you can see Facebook stuff. It works okay. It's way ahead of where everyone thought it would be 5 years ago. But does it work well? And I don't think so. I think there's so many more things to be done with mobile. Like I think the iPad Mini will change this, and I think the Nexus 7 had done it and had started it, where you're putting a bunch of things together, but it comes out into a platform. I think the iPad Mini will be this target platform for it, and then after that, then you'll figure out what goes onto the phone. Then you figure out what goes onto the desktop and web. I really do. When you showed me that Mini, I was like, oh man, it's like what, an eighth of an inch thick. It fits in your pocket. It probably wouldn't fit in most people's pockets, but it's.
Were you saying I have bigger pockets than most people? Why do you say it wouldn't fit into? I mean, it fits into one jacket pocket that I have. It fits into most pants pockets.
Yeah, but you're a little bit different size than most people, so your jacket pockets are going to be different size than most people's. Point. And so it's not going to fit into women's jacket pockets.
No, but it's going to,
unless the
women
pocket
have
size changes for some reason. It could create a whole fashion trend for all I know.
I think it is going to create a fashion trend, and also I think the iPad Mini is going to be the dominant device.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that, Steve, the devices are kind of in place now, right? I mean, you were, 6 months ago, you were effusive about the Nexus, and
well, that's because it was
right,
the best. It was a fantastic device. The only thing I have against the Nexus 7 at this point is it doesn't do exchange email on my corporate network, and it doesn't do AirPlay. It doesn't do any.
That's not corporate network.
The future is not an exchange, though. I think that's clear. So I mean, I think it's a little ahead of its time, but it's
no, but secure email is still not there. Go ahead, John. Sorry.
Yeah. So, but my point is that I think that the hardware platforms are now in place to drive a tremendous amount of innovation in.
Hello.
In.
Is that Scoble?
In native authoring. Of
course it's Scoble.
Right? No, it wasn't me.
No?
I have a better ringtone than that. Come on.
Define better.
It usually has something to do with dubstep.
I see. Go ahead, John. I'm sorry to keep interrupting.
So I think that the devices are now in place on the mobile endpoints to drive native authoring and native creation, right? Which is part of what we were talking about before. I think that it's in place for these devices to really become hubs for all of the smaller, dumber devices that are beginning to infiltrate our lives. Everything from sort of Arduino-driven little hacks on Kickstarter to Nike Fuel bands or connected cars and so on and so forth. So I think that the core devices are now good enough to be sort of hubs for those peripheral devices and do sort of network management, power management for them. And then I think that we're going to see as we move into 2013, a terrific amount of businesses really being built in this new architecture. Because I think that in 2012 we're still seeing quite a bit of hype and a lot of things being built sort of audience first. And I think you're starting to see that shift back because there's a dampening on the funding side, matched with a very sharp uptick in the crowdsourcing funding side, which really sort of drives more distributed innovation, smaller innovation, which is part of what this whole story is about. And so I think that we're on sort of the cusp of a lot of change here. And it's I mean, we've seen it before, but it's kind of remarkable to step back and think, okay, it's been, it will have been 2 years with the iPad before we really start doing native publishing into this or native creation into this. But there's wonderful things starting to appear out there. I don't know if you played with paper. It's just this stunningly beautiful experience, and you could draw on that thing, and somehow your drawings always look fantastic, right?
The thing. I'm not sure that I'm as captivated by the experience software as I am by the ability to be able to plug into the network quickly, be able to expand on the capabilities of the software that's moving more quickly toward mobile on the social side, and just basically be able to keep up or keep somewhat up to the flow. To me, that's the value proposition of the iPad Mini is that it's just always there, it's always available, and I can do, as Scoble points out, with the capabilities around the content creation. I mean, he's talking about it on the phone. I don't find that usable except to retweet or things like that. But
well, I interviewed 2 vice presidents on SoundCloud on my phone. I have a radio station in my pocket, and that's magic. And yeah, that's not text content, but I've written 2,000-word blog posts on my phone because I had nothing else to write on, and I had to get a blog post up. I have a WordPress app on my phone. I have Twitter. I have Facebook. I have Google Plus, and I can publish a lot of places on my phone, and I can type pretty fast. Now I can't type as fast as I can with my trusty keyboard here, but the mobile phone's coming on, and if you carry around a little Bluetooth keyboard with you, you have a lot of content creation capabilities, particularly when you have an iPad.
Well, I think even on my phone, you can. There's a little docking station HDMI port. You can plug it in, and it's a computer. I mean, with a Bluetooth keyboard. But I think the future is probably not there. I mean, I think that's going to continue. But Siri will allow you to do more things on a phone for composing, more than a tweet or something small. Google will have the voice recognition. Dragon has somehow popped into the media again with voice. There's going to be some more things happening around that. I think it's always pie in the sky to me because it's been talked about for 20 years.
By the way,
but it seems to be getting more and more real because these devices are much better now.
Yeah. By the way, the voice recognition on these phones is pretty stunning. I mean, I just said "by the way" and it recognizes "by the way," but let me just try something here. I'm on the Gillmor gang. Period. Here is a potential new blog post. Period. And let's see how that works.
Anything where you have to say "period," it makes no sense to me at all.
Well, you have to put punctuation in, and it understands when you say "period," you're putting punctuation in.
It actually spelled my name right. That's
you
amazing.
say stop. You have to have a
three-syllable
word.
They got Gilmore's name right. It got their punctuation right, of course. But it got all.
I've
the
never
words
seen
right.
that.
And you were speaking fairly
humans
fast.
Can't do that.
So why can't you write a blog post using this stuff? You certainly can, and you go through and just speak the blog post, and then clean it up. The problem is we're looking at this from the aspect of we learned on computers. There's going to be 1 billion people joining this world that have never touched a computer. And they're going to learn on the mobile phone. And they're going to change the world. And that market is going to be served by somebody. And if Evan Williams isn't going to do it, somebody is. And I'm already seeing apps. I have a little bit of an advantage because I get to see stuff like at Flipboard early. And I see what they're coming out with next year. They're doing some pretty cool stuff for content producers and curators. Already, I can record a SoundCloud audio and interview somebody, and then I can feed that in a Flipboard and into Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus and all that. But then I can write a blog post, and both show up, and you can listen to the audio while you're reading the blog post. It's amazing what you can do as a content producer today, and with photography, I already have here. Let me show you this new app. I've shown it on the show before. But with photography, you have a lot of ways to tell stories. I have this app called Light. And let me just show you. Oh, here's where I was digitized at Autodesk, and I can just scroll through the pictures, And then let's see. Oh, here's a little tour of the Qualcomm museum. And in 10 seconds, you can see every single phone that they had in the museum,
You should get them to do a 3D printing of you.
Well, that might happen. I have no idea where those because they digitized my face and it was a pretty good model. So God knows where that's going to appear. So I'm scared.
Probably everywhere.
Some startup sent me a Scoville bobblehead the other day. It was like, oh my God,
that is frightening.
I've jumped the shark.
You can just see that on the Gillmor Gang.
If you give me 2 minutes, I'll go find it somewhere.
John Borthwick, you were going to say something a couple minutes ago. Do you remember it?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I was reacting, I think, to Scoville's one of the points which he made, which was just the sort of the billion plus people who haven't had their primary computing experience on a computer. So I think that we sort of frame everything via the computer. And I think that we've brought that model to so much of what we've created on the iPhone and what we've created on the iPad in the last couple of years has been sort of retrofits of how we understood the computer. And I think that now you're starting to see here in the US and elsewhere, you're starting to see sort of truly native experiences come out that take advantage of the device and all the data that the device gets. And so it's I think it's taken us a while as a society to do that, but the same thing happened with the web, right? You remember, what was that thing, Pointcast or something? You remember that thing where, in the early days, everybody
you
got
mean RSS?
And started flat. No, that was
Pointcast was the machine, a little pyramid that received radio waves and distributed news to you.
Yes, it was
then it went to the internet.
It was the instigator of RSS.
Yeah, but Steve, everybody was so excited about it. Many people were, because they were like, oh, it makes the computer look like a TV. I understand the TV. I mean, it was, if I remember right, News Corp was going to pay $200-300 million for it, and that was how they sort of, it was understood as being sort of, oh, I've taken this uncertain, complicated, difficult thing called the internet, and I've turned it into something I understand called the TV.
Right. The only problem is that it also took down, corporate IT said, excuse me, but no.
Yeah, and also, another problem is that it didn't really scale, or it wasn't really interesting to users, right? So I think that, these native experiences do eventually emerge, and that's what I think is so interesting. And it's happening. It's happening. You can see it.
John, did you see the Microsoft research project that Rick Rashid showed off? He was giving a speech on stage, and the program that they built was recognizing his speech and converting it into text in real time, and then it was also converting it into Chinese in real time, and it was just mind-blowing to think about. Oh, I don't really need a keyboard too much anymore to get my point across. And so if you start learning to think and talk to a phone, you can get around the keyboard limitations pretty quickly. The other thing is these Google Glasses. The reason I went to Oakley was to see the latest wearable computers and talk to the guys who are working on the next generation of wearable computers. And these ski goggles have a screen right down here. So you're skiing along and you look down and you see where on the mountain you are, where your friends are on the mountain, what run you're on, how many vertical feet you've skied already, how much hang time you had on your last jump. It's amazing that the sensors can sense that you've jumped off of the ground, and they measure your hang time and how long you did that. It's just stunning what you can put in a little wearable computer right now. So, and that doesn't even have a camera yet. The Google Glasses, the Project Glasses coming out next year, will have a camera, we'll have a microphone, we'll have speaker, we'll have 7 sensors on it.
Right, and so this is all the. I was sort of riffing. This is all off the. I remember the discussion you did earlier this year at BetaWorks, but it's all the sort of contextual stuff, which is slowly starting to happen. Like yesterday, I'm a big fan of something called Fantastical, which is a lightweight app on the desktop for calendaring. And what's nice about it is it's not if you use multiple desktops or multiple spaces, you can. It's not contingent upon one. It's not an app. It's in the taskbar. So that's nice. So they released their iPhone version yesterday, and there's certain things which I'm not too excited about it. But one thing which I love is that you just put in, when you add an event, you just put in dinner with Kevin and Steve, and it knows, it automatically places that at like 7 p.m.
Yep.
Right? And so, okay, maybe you want your dinner to be 8 p.m. or 6 p.m. or 10 p.m., whatever. But it just like the beginning of a little bit of intelligence starts to come in there.
Well, and
so,
why didn't it talk to Open Table and see if there's actually a table at 7? Maybe there's a table at 7:30, and it could come back and say, "Hey, no tables available, but there's one at 7:30."
Well, yeah, but this stuff does take time. I mean,
it does.
I was ranting this week with some people in the city in New York about the fact that, I mean, when Sandy hit, it took 24 hours after Sandy hit, Con Ed was still saying that we had electricity, and we didn't have electricity for 5 days, right? And everybody knew that Lower Manhattan was out, and yet Con Ed did not know it. And the network doesn't have a two-way capability, right? Yeah. And so they don't actually know you've lost power. But Time Warner Cable know you've lost power. So, a little bit of data sharing, right?
Yeah.
It's not like there's some big, merger or anything that's required. But Time Warner Cable should just be able to send Con Ed a little bit of a signal saying, this neighborhood has no power, by the way. Because that would be an important thing for, So
do you think
it's
that
like this stuff
this data sharing thing, I mean, isn't that going to have to start at the technology providers? I mean, they're not doing that. I mean, how come we're not getting push notification sharing across the Android and iOS platforms?
Right, and you've got,
Steve, explain what you meant by that.
You can't see push notifications on Android. You can't see them on iOS. They're not available, right, Kevin?
You're on drugs.
Well, I'm on drugs.
Well, the notifications
they're available on both.
Different.
They work on both.
They don't work on both.
You liked them when you were using Android a bit. Now you've decided they don't exist anymore. It's very bizarre.
All right, let me cut to you saying that, and then, all right, say that again, please.
The push notifications have been on Android.
No, the thing about Android
all the time. It was one of the reasons I used it in the first place before iOS had them. So you seem to be saying they've disappeared from
what I'm saying
Android
is
now.
that
the tricky thing is actually making sure that when you delete them on one, they delete on the other. That's the thing that I find now is that I go over to the other device and I see all the same notifications I have on the other one because the back ends are not smart enough to remove them when you've already viewed them.
And the two systems aren't
that works
hooked
a bit
up
better
together.
on some of the Google stuff, but it doesn't work on Twitter or Facebook. You end up, or even on email, so you end up with the same things appearing on both all the time, which is annoying. But
the two systems are completely different. What if you tell Apple stop showing me these notifications, my Android still shows them. Like if I get a new app, I always do that. The systems are not connected. I think that's what Steve's noticing. The notifications come from Facebook, right? If you load the Facebook app, all of a sudden you're getting notifications on both platforms, but the notifications are not hooked up together.
Not only are they not hooked up together, but you can't, there's a reading list on iOS, which I use all the time now.
Yep.
And I can move that. I can move that everywhere on iOS, obviously, but I can't see it on Android. On Android, the Chrome, version of reading list, basically, what goes into the Chrome browser is automatically synced up to any device that's running Chrome. So it is more ubiquitous than it's kind of more.
But I think that Steve, I think that what you're raising is a really important point. Is that the platform providers are moving up and down the stack and very aggressively trying to sort of grab pieces of the stack because still nobody quite knows where the value is going to be in all this. So there's a lot of sort of land grabs that's going on, and I think it's really important to from a user perspective to try and pick for key services like read later or notifications, sort of independent providers who are independent of the underlying stack. And so, in English, what I'm saying is that, use Pocket, right? Or service like that has both an Android and an iOS product, and that works really well. But if you tie yourself in the read later environment to Apple, then you're never going to see that in Android. And I think the same for notifications. And I think that the more that users sort of push that way, I think the more we're going to push or help the platforms become ubiquitous, which is good for the platform developers, and for the platform providers, but also make this stuff really make sense, because as vertically integrated things, these are they're ultimately kind of crappy experiences.
John Toshek.
Yes, Steve.
Yeah, I want you to talk now.
I think the solving the notification problem of synchronized notifications is not even a smart thing to start with, because there's so many other things to solve first. I think that also people want to see different notifications on different devices. It's a device world, and they want to see maybe something on one, not the other. I just think that the biggest problem is exposing what services are available as notifications, and that's the first thing to work on. In the enterprise, you want to have notifications coming from your supply chain management system, that's feeding up into a service that's distributed to your mobile device, so that if you're ordering something, you can see, the consumer can see what's happening. You want to see notifications from your friends on what's posted into these services that I haven't used, but like Medium or whatever. You want to see those things posted, but you want it on different devices. Maybe you only want to see Medium on one device and and Twitter on another. I don't know. So I don't even think they should solve the problem yet. I think the problem is just figuring out the abstraction layer, making everything a notification service.
Scoble, what do you think?
I sort of agree with John that it's not the best place to start. I mean, on my phone I have 200 apps, and they're all 200 silos of information that don't use each other. The example that John gave of the restaurant or the calendar thing, that puts something on your calendar, not hooking up to OpenTable, not hooking up to Food Spotting, not hooking up to Foursquare, not hooking up to Yelp, is a good example. When developers start really integrating these systems together, then we'll have the fodder to create a new kind of notification that goes way beyond these stupid notifications that we're getting right now.
What's the motivation for them to do this?
Survival.
Survival.
Well, but, in theory, Steve, it should be sort of that they're thinking big about their opportunity. But I think that one of the tension points here is that, particularly the advertising model sort of forces people back into a silo. And so, and then they actually think smaller, right? Well, they don't think network-wide. They just think,
right. Well, isn't that
domain.
The default? Isn't that what what developers usually do?
Developers hate dependencies. I mean, I remember having these arguments at Microsoft. Oh, we don't want to take a dependency on this other team. Right. And developers innately don't like that because, one, they don't know how good that code is, how trustworthy their system is, whether it's going to stay up or not. But it slows them down if they have to work with somebody else to integrate something that they don't control into their code.
Yeah, but at some level, it's sort of like the pre-election video by Samuel Jackson. It's kind of wake the fuck up, right? Because this is a platform that's been built, and it's bigger than all of us. And so, Zynga, is now seeing its dependency on Facebook. But Zynga, 3 years ago, people were saying Zynga should sort of get off the Facebook crack. And they got off a bit, but they should have gotten off a heck of a lot more, right? And so we're living in a multi-platform world where, there's all these different layers of platform risk, right? So, Apple and Google and the mapping stuff, that's platform risk, Twitter platform risk, Facebook Zynga. I mean, the world we're living in now is a world where there is a codependency of infrastructure and of data. And I think you've got to work in that environment.
Right, and this is why I think that push notification is, in fact, the unification system. And the sooner that there's pressure, as John Toshek calls it, survival, to be able to play in some sort of coordinated environment, which I believe is coming with the iPad Mini and Nexus 7, that we're going to see a big move. We're running out of time here, so I want to just ask a quick question about Microsoft, Windows 8, and the Surface. We were at the Gartner AADI, developer architectural conference in Vegas this week, and would you, John Toshek, would you say that the consensus on the part of the analysts is neutral to negative on Windows 8?
Yeah, I'd say that. It depends on who you ask, of course, and what they think is the problem. Everyone had a slightly different take on what the issue is. But some said, sure, they're going to see some adoption just because it's going to ship on PCs, but it's going to be less than what was expected. Some say the interface is too dramatic, as we've been saying on the Gillmor Gang for a long time, for enterprises to use. But in the enterprise itself, it was pretty ubiquitous. They're only finishing up the Windows 7 rollout, so there's no way they can start a Windows 8 project because it takes a couple of years for them to get it in there, and that's what happens. But it's an operating system. Who cares?
John Borthwick, what do you think? Is it going to make it, or is it going to just be the end of Windows and Office?
Yeah, so I wasn't sure when you started off the and one more thing before we get off. I thought you were going to go actually to iTunes' interface, but jumping back over to Windows and Microsoft, somebody in my office got a Surface, and I spent a day playing with it. I think that the hardware is pretty impressive, but I think that the software is where it's they should have waited another 6 months and gotten the software right. And I think that both the lack of applications on it, but also just the actual software. I mean, there's pieces of on the Surface where you sort of, if you burrow deep down enough, it's like sort of John Malkovich in that movie. You like disappear into another dimension. You can almost see DOS. And so, yeah, I think the product is, I think it's a half-baked product. I just think that this is Microsoft is increasing the speed of irrelevancy, and it's at some point I think that things are going to have to change over there, or just when you think about tech companies today, people do not mention Microsoft, and that's remarkable. It's also in a way it's kind of a bummer, because when we talk about all this platform stuff, Microsoft certainly knew how to agitate, but they also did know how to actually be a platform, right? And you've got all these new entrants who are struggling to figure out what it's like to be a platform. And you have Microsoft, who seems to continue to plow into irrelevancy.
I think they lost that platform talent a long time ago. But I'm sort of bored by the whole Microsoft thing. And why? First of all, it's they sold 40 million copies, and that's I always said this. Even if it's a total failure, they're still going to sell 200 million copies of this thing, just because of the momentum of how many people have Windows in the world. And so it's not a market. It's not a thing that we can really ignore, but it's a boring thing. It didn't bring anything dramatically new for developers. It didn't open up a new app category. It didn't make us dream. It's not like these wearable computers that we're starting to see that get, when I spoke at BetaWorks, the developers were dreaming. That we have no idea if these things are going to work or not, but at least we're dreaming. We're like, what would that world look like? Take us to that new world. Microsoft is like, this is sort of a little bit nicer copy of the iPad in some ways, but it's 3 years late, and we already dreamed about that world. We already built it.
Why is it nicer than the iPad?
The active tiles are sort of nicer. If you're going to buy into the fact that you're going to look at a home screen and want to see information there, it's sort of nicer. It's nice. It shows me more information than my home screen on my iPhone and my iPad. But first of all, I don't spend that much time on my home screen, so I really don't. I don't feel enough pain there to switch platforms, right? I don't think very many people are going to switch from the iPad to Windows unless they're a die-hard Office fan. And there's lots of die-hard Office fans. I mean, I see them on the planes. They're using Excel or PowerPoint or Outlook. If you're die-hard like that, you're going to be attracted to this. That's why they're going to sell 200 million copies of this thing. Because there's a lot of people
I don't
like
know
that.
I mean, they've already sold 100 million copies of Windows 7. I don't know that they're going to sell 200 million of Windows 8.
But it's boring. Even if they do, it doesn't get anybody talking in the Valley about, oh my God, I can build a new kind of app. You know, at best they're saying, well, it's a little bit easier to build an app for this thing because it's on .NET and I can use a lot more HTML5. But that's at best. Nobody is dreaming about building new kind of app. You know, and when Xbox came out, there were developers who were like, oh my God, I have a new platform that can let me build a new kind of game. And Connect, when that came out, same thing. The Windows 8 doesn't cause us to dream.
Right.
John's dreaming right now of the show being over, I think.
We're all dreaming about that. I got to leave for Paris, by the way.
All right, well, hang on a second. Kevin, just your quick thoughts.
I think the sort of loss of platformness in Microsoft is actually quite shocking, but it's true. It's partly because the web as platform eclipsed it completely, and now mobile, the mobile platforms are edging in there, and Microsoft has this sort of historic worldview that they do everything, and that's been difficult. And of course, the thing that Robert said about we don't want to take a dependency on each other means that they ended up building multiple layers of the same thing back and forth inside the company. So they ended up with this rococo construction of different sub-platforms.
Not only
I think
that, Kevin.
one thing about the apps being able to talk to each other is something that iOS actively militates against, and macOS is now doing this too. They're making it much harder for apps to see each other's documents.
I think that's
everything you
overstated.
save disappears inside the same app. I think that's problematic. And
All right.
that's a step backwards in my view.
Since
Kevin,
I'm just
Kevin
gonna roughshod off you guys. I think it's overstated about the task switching or talking between apps. I think that we're starting to see a lot of again, over push notification, we're starting to see a lot of blurring of that distinction. I don't think the users know the difference between an app that's folding to another app and a single integrated app. I also think that Windows 8 is bipolar. I think that it's you're lost in one place and then you go to the other place and you're lost from the first place. I just don't think it makes sense. I think that if they're trying to stop, the hemorrhaging of the desktop, they're not going to win. So I think it's just futile. I think the Surface is a nice device, but the aircraft carrier is another year and a half behind because everybody's moving to these 7, 8-inch factors, and where's the Surface Mini? It sure isn't going to appear immediately now that Sinofsky's gone. John Borthwick, last thoughts.
Have a good weekend.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry for the ineptitude of the directing here, but it's always good to know why Tina is as good at this as she is. John Toshak, last thought.
Have a good weekend. And I'm going to play around with iTunes and the new interface this weekend and see what it's like. But it looks about the same as before, except they moved a sidebar away.
Scoville.
At Oakley, we talked about the future of product design. They sell sunglasses all over the world. And they say the future product is going to be customized to who you are, where you are, who you're with. And think about who knows that. Amazon knows what I buy. Facebook knows who I am and sort of who I'm with, thanks to Highlight. Apple knows my credit card and my music buying behavior and other things, my TV watching behavior.
What does Oakley know?
Well, Oakley knows how to get something into retail, which Apple does, and Microsoft is trying. But does Google have retail? No. So if Google wants access to the retail world, they need to partner with somebody like an Oakley to get their glasses onto the retail shelf at Sunglass Hut, right? Because Luxottica owns a monopoly on sunglasses and distribution of sunglasses. Oakley also has the ability to create cultural change because they have relationships with all of the gods in society, the skiers, the snowboarders, the motorcycle people, the Formula One racers, the Olympic athletes. They work very hard on building those relationships and keeping those solid, so they are able to bring a new product to the influencers of society.
So the new world's going to be Oakley versus Red Bull.
Well,
Yeah.
Red Bull's a different product. But
The
yeah,
new world's
Oakley.
going to be, butt casts. You know how you get pocket phoned? Well, we're going to get eye-casted, and all of a sudden somebody's going to be broadcasting because they just took a double gainer over a mogul. I mean, it's just. I know you're excited about this, Robert, and maybe the developers are too. But
they're sold out. By the way, they started selling these sunglasses for $600, and they're sold out worldwide. And by the way, Apple has put them in all their stores, and so
Apple.
Apple. There's a reason I went and visited Oakley. Oakley is tied in with a lot of stuff going on that is coming out in the next 18 months. And I can't go too much into that, but Oakley and Apple are pretty well aligned on this new wearable computer front. So we're going to see the world differently.
All right, I believe you. I didn't until now, but now I believe you.
Do
you believe me?
The Apple mention.
Yeah, exactly. There's only one thing. All right, listen, I got to wrap this. I want to thank Rackspace and particularly Rob Legess, without which this show would not exist. I would like to thank NewTek and the TriCaster, which, if it could be operated by a chimpanzee, would look better than what I did today. I'd like to thank Kevin Marks. I'd like to thank, here, I can do this. I'd like to thank John Toshak and his child. I'd like to thank Kevin Marks. I'd like to thank Robert Scoble.
I won't show you what's on VentureBeat right now, but it has to do with sex toys and 3D printing. It's pretty funny.
Like I said, buttcasts. and from New York, once again, John, we never got to all the cool things that are happening right now, but we will next time, I hope.
Bye, Steve.
Thanks. This is Steve Gillmor. This is me. This has been the Gillmor Gang. I want to thank our producer and director, Tina Chase Gillmor. Please come home. And I want to thank everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Have fun.